Will Sue leave this world? Looking at Natasha Romanoff, Wanda had a slight worry on her expression. Facing Wanda's question, Natasha Romanoff was silent for a moment, then put his arms around Wanda and said softly, I'm not too sure. After all, Sue is not originally from our world. Although the world he was in has been destroyed, there are still countless parallel universes. If he doesn't feel nostalgia in this world, then maybe in the future, he will choose to leave this world if he has the opportunity. Hearing Natasha Romanoff's answer, Wanda blinked, then nodded and said, I understand, as long as Sue has a sense of belonging to this world, then he will stay here, right? That's right. Gently rubbing Wanda's head, Natasha Romanoff smiled. Wanda, what you mean is that you treat Sue. It's nothing. Leaning on Natasha Romanoff's shoulder, Wanda said as it should, in the Black Gold Diary, Sue is my future husband in a parallel world, right? Then the Black Gold Diary also said that after Sue came to this world, he searched for traces of himself in the parallel world, and found that this world does not have him, right? That's right. So, looking at Natasha Romanoff, Wanda spread her hands very seriously and said, since there is no in this world in the original him, it means that he is my future husband. It's all an arrangement of fate, since the former knows who my future husband is. Then you can't let go easily. Otherwise, how will I start a family and have 2 lovely babies in the future? You can't find someone casually, or create a robot like Sue. Looking at Wanda's swearing look, Natasha Romanoff suddenly felt that this awakening was right. If Sue is Wanda's husband in the future, then there is no him in this world. That's like what Wanda said. What will she do in a few years? There are more than 10 days until you're in Pietro's birthdays. Gently embracing Wanda, Natasha Romanoff smiled and said, I'll invite Sue over then. Good. Hearing what Natasha Romanoff said, Wanda gave a sweet smile. There's a word I didn't say to Natasha Romanoff. That is, Sue is really attractive. Especially under the handsome and resolute appearance, the vicissitudes of the stories between the brows are really mysterious and charming. Inside Sue Che's apartment. Finally, Natasha Romanoff's trust value has finally reached 90%. Looking at the prompt on the system, Natasha Romanoff's trust value has reached 90%. Sue Che breathed a sigh of relief. Receiving the reward without any hesitation, a stream of heat began to circulate in Sue Che's body in the next second. A moment later, nothing else happened. The imagined filth being expelled from the pore did not happen. Clenching his fist lightly, a strong sense of strength came from his body. At the same time, Sue Che found that his vision, hearing, acuity, etc. had all been improved by huge amounts of. He held the coffee table in front of the sofa and tried it. With one hand, he easily lifted the coffee table, which weighed more than 100 kilograms. Even Sue Che didn't feel much effort during the whole process. Tisk. 10 times the peak physical fitness of ordinary people. Host. Sue Che. Age. 19 years old. Identity. Writer of Black Gold Diary, member of Parallel World Avengers, Pseudo. Ability. Superman Body Defense Perfect Advanced Version, 10 times the peak physical fitness of ordinary people, Extremely Water Control Ability Perfect Version. Current list of Black Gold Diary holders. Wanda Django Maximov, Trust Value, 97%. Natasha Romanoff, Trust Value, 90%. Nick Fury, Trust Value, 73%. The number of Black Gold Diary holders that can be added, 1 person. Look at the system page. Sue Che saw that the widow's trust value had reached 90%. Just let the system open a quota for new Black Gold Diary holders. Looking for new places for Black Gold Diary holders. As the system started to look for new quotas, Sue Che also watched the name list and profile picture flashing constantly. Sue Che is also very curious about who the next holder of the Black Gold Diary will be. To be honest, the specific owner of the next Black Gold Diary does not have much influence on Sue-san. But if it is a member of the Avengers Alliance, it will be very convenient for Sue Che to refresh their trust. If it's Dormammu the Dark Lord, Kong the Conqueror of the Time Administration, or Kong the Exile in Ant-Man 2. Even some inconspicuous little characters, after all, it's not easy to increase their trust value, isn't it? Just as Sue Che was thinking, the number of new Black Gold Diary holders gradually stopped. Looking at the finally randomly selected name, Yindi didn't know whether to laugh or say something for a while. To be honest, she is definitely not as bad as Dark Lord Dormammu, or other small villains. To put it bluntly, it's really far away in the sky. That's right. The new addition to the Black Gold Diary is the Queen of Asgard, the wife of the god King Odin, Frigga. Well, it's Thor's mother. So how do you brush her trust value? Hey, no. Look at the name of Queen Frigg of Asgard. Su Che thought for a moment. Although Frigga was raised by a witch, but who said that her trust value cannot be broken? Most importantly, the frozen Steve Rogers was retrieved and unfrozen in advance through the Black Gold Diary, shield. Then Wanda and Pietro were brought back from Sokovia to be raised by Natasha Romanoff. Since these things are ahead of schedule, the fate trajectory of these people has been changed because of his appearance. So, can Frigga, who is worrying about Thor and Loki, also let Odin exile Thor to the earth in advance? After all, one is struggling with how to teach her child to be a mother worthy of the throne of Asgard. Seeing that reckless, arrogant and belligerent son again, after going to the earth in the future, he will become a superhero. Become a qualified king. Then maybe, she will take the initiative to design and let Thor be exiled to the earth in advance. The Queen of Asgard has never been a noob. Design a little bit for my son, so that he can become better, understand what is the real king, and become more responsible and responsible. This is definitely true. Thinking of this, Su Che knew how to increase her trust value. Asgard, Crystal Asgard within, go down first. Looking at the maids serving her, Queen Frigga smiled softly and asked them to go to rest first. After the maids left, Frigga poured herself a cup of tea. The movements are still so elegant and gentle, but there seems to be a touch of sadness between the brows. Already more than 1500 years old, Thor is still so impulsive and reckless. He successfully inherited his warlike husband Odin, and inherited Asgard's martial arts character. But he didn't inherit his own thoughts. This is not allowed. A qualified general can be aggressive and impulsive. But a qualified king is absolutely not allowed to let emotions influence reason. The current Thor is not yet a qualified heir to the crown prince. However, I was reluctant to let him hang under the tree of life like my husband Odin back then, and experience those pains and tribulations. Thinking of this, Queen Frigg picked up the teacup, smelled the unique fragrance of tea, and then blew a little. Well, the unique tea taste of the earth is really good. This made Frigga, who was a little sad in her heart, show a gentle smile. This was a gift that Loki brought back for himself when he thought he would like it when he went to Earth. I heard that this is the best drink from the east of the earth, and I will definitely like it. Facts have proved that I really like it very much. But Loki is too naughty. I heard that when he went to the earth, he turned into a man named D.B. Cooper and left an unsolved case for the earth. Fortunately, the earth's supreme mage didn't make a move, otherwise Loki might not be able to come back. But when it comes to Loki, Frigga also has some headaches. Compared to him Thor, Loki doesn't care about anything on the surface. But as a mother, adoptive mother, how could Frigga not know about the past 1,500 years? Loki has always been jealous of Thor. He is jealous that Thor has acquired Mjolnir. Jealous of Thor being favored by his own husband, Odin. He is like a child who lacks love. I want to work hard to prove that I am not worse than Thor. He is also worthy of being loved by his own husband, worthy of the status of Prince of Asgard, and worthy of the love of Asgard's people. Well, thinking of this, Frigga smiled helplessly. The husband has all eyes on Thor. This throws Loki off balance. Even if I want to make up for the lack of father's love and attention, I can't do it as a mother. After all, my family is the royal family of Asgard after all, not the common family. So, putting down the teacup, I saw a black gold diary on the table inadvertently from the corner of my eye. Looking at this black gold book that suddenly appeared. Although Queen Frigg didn't know what it was, why did it appear on her desk? However, his expression didn't change, not even a hint of surprise. A long-time pampered life, coupled with the experience of being raised by witches in the past. Let Frigga have long been calm about any sudden events. So, face this black gold diary that suddenly appeared. Frigga didn't get nervous immediately, or call anyone. After a careful perception, I didn't find any danger in the bedroom. He picked up the teapot and poured himself another cup of clear tea. Since there is no danger, I didn't notice any invading enemy in front of me. Then Frigga thought it might not be a big deal. After all, some past experiences are far more treacherous than a black gold diary suddenly appearing on my desk. So, it's nothing. So, This is suffering for Su Che. Here comes the classic scene. Holding a cup of coffee in his hand, he looked at the two people sitting opposite him. Natasha Romanoff looked at Steve Rogers for a while, and Su Che for a while. There was an emotion in her eyes that didn't fit her identity, and it was spreading constantly at this moment. It has to be said that the auras of these two people are very similar, even very similar. They are all so tall, slender, handsome and tough. Moreover, there was a trace of melancholy in the eyes of these two people. The other eyebrow reveals indescribable vicissitudes. A child who seems to be full of confusion about the future and seems to be abandoned by the world, working hard but not knowing how to integrate into this world. One eye is full of stories, and it seems to see through all the vicissitudes of life in the mystery. God. Sitting together, these two people are simply human-shaped eye-catching machines, okay? He was tall and handsome, coupled with the charming and deep eyes full of stories. This is enough to make women involuntarily arouse their desire to explore. Hard as there. Suddenly two came. I'm afraid that from today on 17, there will be an endless stream of customers in this Tahualan cafe. And the main guests will definitely be women from the age of 16 to 40. You can't go wrong. That is, Natasha Romanoff did not come across from China. Otherwise, you will definitely feel emotional. In this small coffee shop, there are actually two crouching dragons and phoenix chicks hidden. How can he do? It's not just Natasha Romanoff who thinks so. Even Selena at the counter, her eyes are shining at this moment. Especially looking at the coffee shop, many female customers are secretly looking at the boss and his friends. Selena couldn't stop being excited. Oh my god, two handsome guys with melancholy temperament gathered in the coffee shop. After this, do you still have to worry about the business of the coffee shop? Just because of the appearance and temperament, I am afraid that many girls will come to line up every day. It's all money. How much money does this daily turnover make? As for your relationship with yourself, harm, you can't say that. I am the store manager of Tahualan Cafe. Definitely have to care about the quality of the coffee shop business. And as a store manager, in addition to the fixed weekly salary, I also have a commission every month. Therefore, I naturally hope that the business of this coffee shop will be booming. The more the boss earns, the more he can earn. Well, regret it. It's just that the boss doesn't agree to put his picture up. Otherwise, relying on the good looks of the boss and the mysterious temperament that has gone through many vicissitudes and is full of stories, the turnover of the coffee shop can be doubled. If the boss and his equally melancholy friend can be seen, they are willing to post photos in a conspicuous place outside the coffee shop. Then Selena feels that the turnover of the coffee shop is confident that it will triple. It is a pity that such a good resource cannot be used. Well, another girl came over to strike up a conversation. He wanted to take one of Su Che and Steve back to his bedroom and treasure it. Only Selena wanted to conscientiously post photos of the two of them outside to solicit business. Did you see? This is what a qualified store manager should do, instead of coveting the beauty of the boss. In the coffee shop, the location is close to the sun. By the way, don't both of you keep silent. Hold the coffee cup and look left and right. Eventually Natasha Romanoff somewhat capitulated. Okay, my job is done. To be honest, I think Nick Fury's idea is really good, because the two of you are very similar in temperament and aura. I believe that the two of you will have a lot of common language. So, I won't bother you two. After speaking, Natasha Romanoff put down the coffee cup, then got up and left with a smile. Watch Natasha Romanoff leave. Steve Rogers, who had always been silent, laughed at himself. Looking at the dazzling but gentle sunlight outside the window. Turning to Su Che and smiling, sorry, I don't know why Nick Fury asked her to send me to you. I asked her before I came here, you are not the so-called shield. So, I seem to be causing you trouble, it won't. Hearing Steve's polite words, Su Che picked up the coffee and took a sip. I think you should also try this unsweetened hand-ground black coffee. Although the first drink is slightly sour and bitter, the aftertaste is very good after careful tasting. I'll just forget it. Facing Su Che's invitation, Steve Rogers shook his head with a smile. Looking at the coffee in his hand, a trace of nostalgia flashed in his eyes. In the past, I once saw a person. In the name of a test, she fired a few shots at the shield in my hand. Just when I thought the matter was over, but before the task was approaching, she brought me a cup of coffee. That's right, it's the unsweetened black coffee you mentioned. Then, Amidst the smothered smile on my other friend's face, I drank it with my breath held. I still remember that feeling, so I don't want to try it again. Having said that, Steve Rogers raised his head, gently flicking the spoon in the coffee cup. You should know who I am. I think Natasha Romanoff should at least tell you who I am. Steve Rogers, who exists in the Memorial Hall and is known as a legendary hero who lives up to his reputation. Listening to Captain America's question, Su Che smiled with an unchanged expression. Yeah, an old antique that exists in the Memorial Hall. Our Shu Ying should always exist in the Memorial Hall, instead of opening his eyes and facing this strange world again. He turned his head and looked at the bustling and gorgeous city outside the window. In Steve Rogers' eyes, there was an undisguised sense of strangeness. Actually, I've been awake for days. It seemed as if he was confiding to Su Che, and also seemed to be talking to himself. Steve Rogers spoke very slowly. It's more like a bystander telling someone else's story. This world is very nice. There are more types of food, cars and high-rise buildings everywhere. There are many types of coffee, and mobile phones and computers are also very common. Even many diseases that were very difficult in our era are easy to solve in this era. Only. Frowning slightly, Steve was silent for a moment, but didn't know what to say. Finally, he turned his head to look at Su Che and asked seriously, "Are you a psychiatrist?" Nick Fury said I needed a psychiatrist, and then asked that Ms. Natasha Romanoff to send me to you. But I feel that you are not a psychiatrist. My intuition has always been very accurate. I can always feel that kind of feeling in you, that feeling just like me. It's like wandering outside this world, not belonging to the people who should appear in this era. Sorry, I don't know how to describe this feeling. As the immortal legendary among the legendaries, Steve Rogers is very observant. Therefore, he could easily get the very young-looking Su Che in front of him. I noticed that kind of aura that was not similar to my own at the moment, even very consistent. It was as if he was of the same kind as himself and did not belong to this world. But he wasn't sure either. After all, his own experience is already bizarre enough. How could there be someone like me who doesn't belong to this era? Although, I also hope to have a similar kind, so that I don't seem so lonely. But, this is ridiculous. 3 days later, by the river in the suburbs of New York. For fishing, you have to make a nest first. Su Che has the perfect version of water control ability. Facing the calm river in front of you, you can easily feel the number of fish in the water. However, if you use ability for things like fishing, you will lose a lot of fun. After all, if you just want to catch fish, even Su Che doesn't need a fishing rod. Harvesting can get more than detonator frying fish. But you didn't seem to say that the day before yesterday. Sitting next to Su Che with a fishing rod, Steve Rogers looked at the empty fishing baskets of the two and said with a smile, I always feel that fishing, as an activity, really has the novice protection period you mentioned. Look, you and I came fishing for the first time the day before yesterday. I caught 7 in one afternoon, and you also caught Peng. Each of us caught 3 fish yesterday. But today, it has been more than 2 hours, and now I haven't caught a single fish. Listening to Steve's words, Su Che shrugged his shoulders. Didn't take advantage of ability to use the current to push the school of fish to his side. Instead, he quietly held the fishing rod and waited for the fish to take the bait. That's what fishing is like. Only by calming down can you feel the joy of fishing. Turning to look at Steve, Su Che smiled and said, Anyway, what people like us need most is time. Hearing what Su Che said, Steve nodded. Indeed, for people like us, the most important thing is time. But it's hard to imagine that there are freaks like the two of us in the same world. Honestly, I'm grateful. Su. Looking at Su Che, Steve took a deep breath, but the melancholy in his eyes was slowly dissipating. After knowing that you are not from this world, I felt a lot more at ease. At least, that feeling is like losing your way in this strange world. You can only be alone, and when you walk down the fog, you suddenly find an organization. That sense of security at least allows me to sleep very peacefully every night. It's really not easy. But then again, the reason Nick Fury asked Natasha Romanoff to send me to you. It is estimated that although he does not know that you are from a parallel world, I think he should be very similar to you in the confused and out-of-place look he saw from me. That's why I think that I will calm down slowly by your side, and then gradually integrate into this new world. Speaking of this, Steve looked at Su Che with a serious and sincere expression. But don't worry, I promise I won't tell this secret to anyone else. listening to Steve's tone of gratitude and sincerity. Su Che was silent for a moment, then said with a hearty smile, "Actually, a secret that has been kept in my heart for a long time will become a burden instead. Steve, as you said, after you woke up from the freeze, you couldn't accept the world for a while. The former lovers are gone, and the former teammates are all gone. There is not even a familiar person. I feel confused and unable to integrate into this world. But, who isn't? My world was destroyed, and I changed from a person who once had everything to a wanderer who had nothing and was abandoned by the world." He raised his eyes and looked at the sparkling but unusually calm lake in front of him. "Steve, you said that my appearance made you feel that you are not alone in this world. In fact, everyone is the same. Also, I'm very happy. Well, it's really nasty and embarrassing to say this. I always feel pissed off. But in fact, what Su Che said was all sincerity. If not alone, who would like to sit in a coffee shop for a whole morning?" And when Nick Fury arranged for Natasha Romanoff, with Steve Rogers, to come, Su Che knew that he absolutely couldn't refuse. Whether it's because Steve Rogers just woke up from the ice at this moment, feeling abandoned by the world. My teammate in this parallel world can't just watch him confused. Or what I wrote in my diary, if you push Steve Rogers out at this time, then this is contrary to the character set that I maintain. And Nick Fury is also out of this consideration, worried that he will leave this world in the future. That's why Steve Rogers was sent over. On the one hand, it allows Steve to quickly integrate into this world, at least to quickly adapt to life in this world. On the other hand, I also want to deepen my bond with this world. One day in the future, I will suddenly leave this world. But speaking of it, in fact, the appearance of Steve Rogers. It really relieved a certain part of Su Che's psychological pressure. Let yourself save a lot of lonely situations. It was written in the diary that the parallel world he was in was destroyed. It's just to deceive the holder of the black gold diary, and then get the ability, truth. But actually? That's right, I crossed over by myself. Traveled into this familiar and strange world. When I dream back to midnight, why don't I miss the world I am in? Wanderers who have been away from home for a long time will miss their hometown. So what about yourself who can't go back? Nick Fury thinks he's Steve Rogers' medicine. But Steve, this guy who has been abandoned by the world for nearly 70 years. It may not be your own good medicine. Salvation is often mutual. At least that's how Su Che sees it. However, Nick Fury doesn't think so. At this moment, Nick Fury feels a bit of a headache. Especially after hearing Hill report that Steve Rogers turned down joining S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury's already dark face is even darker now. As for Steve Rogers being able to recover from the ice, Nick Fury is still having fun. At least, Nick Fury was of great use to Steve's arrangements. Can result take a look at what Steve and Su Che have done during these 3 days. Early in the morning, Steve would knock on Su Che's door and invite him to go for a run together. Then the two of them ran around the lakeside of the monument, running more than 10 miles almost every morning. After the run, the two went home to take showers and then went out for breakfast together. Tisk. It is said that the apartment for Steve is arranged next to Su Che's single-family apartment. Is it for the convenience of the two of you to drop by? Even if it's for the convenience of visiting, we can't do everything together from morning to night. It's okay to spend the morning at Ta Hualan Cafe after breakfast. In the afternoon, we simply went fishing together. Or the two of you could just sleep together at night, so I can get back the apartment I bought for Steve and save a lot of money. Okay. The two people have been in contact for a long time, and they can gradually eliminate each other's strangeness about this world. This is a good thing. But when he thought that Su Che didn't trust S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury felt that he had made a mistake. After all, not even he thought of it. It's only been 3 days, and Steve flatly refused to join S.H.I.E.L.D. Only 3 days. Do you want it so fast? You must know when he was revived from the ice. I had high hopes for him and asked him to join S.H.I.E.L.D. to lead the S.H.I.E.L.D. action group. I can also relax myself and secretly investigate the internal affairs of S.H.I.E.L.D. The result is good now, and I haven't waited for myself to take action. In the end, I was very optimistic about Steve, whom I trusted, so I was completely stolen by Su Che. Depend on. It's been almost a week. Look at the display on the system. Asgard's queen, Frigga, still has 0 trust at the moment. What does this mean? This means that it has been a week, and the queen is still flipping through the black gold diary that suddenly appeared in her field of vision. It really is. Shook his head. Forget it, people didn't see it, and I couldn't do anything about it. I can't fly to Asgard and force Frigga to read this black gold diary. Open the system compilation page and continue to write the next diary. Shield, morning run, breakfast, coffee, fishing. Looking at the records over and over again, Nick Fury put down the messages that the agents reported to him. Forget it. Think of it as a temporary vacation for Steve Rogers, the legendary hero. After all, it hasn't been long since he just recovered from the ice. Let Su Che lead him into this world first. Just in time, two people can slowly deepen their bond. Su Che, who is also provincial, has no emotion for this world, and will choose to leave in the future. Bang bang bang. Hearing the knock on the door, Nick Fury raised his head and took a look at. He found that Alexander Pierce was standing at the door at the moment, looking at himself with a smile on his face. Why are you so free to come to my office today? Putting down the report in his hand, Nick Fury looked at Pierce, who came over and sat opposite him, and asked. Although, because of that black gold diary, Nick Fury already had some doubts about Alexander the dummy, Alexander Pierce. However, on the surface, it is necessary to remain calm. Well, Alex the fool was right. If he is Hydra, he is a fool for sticking with that stupid goal. If he wasn't Hydra, then during his time as S.H.I.E.L.D. director, let Hydra infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D. This alone is enough to prove that he is Alex's idiot. It's nothing, just move your legs up and down the stairs. Looking at Nick Fury, Alexander Pierce sat across his desk and laughed. After all, being active at my age is good. Maybe it will last a few more years because of this. Then you have to take good care of your body. Hearing what Pierce said, Nick Fury joked. If you are in poor health and step down as S.H.I.E.L.D. Secretary General, how can I apply for funding from the World Security Council? Come on, Nick. Smiling and waving his hands, Alexander Pierce said, can't Hill help you apply? That's not the same, and who cares if the application for funding is more? After exchanging greetings with a smile, Alexander Pierce pretended to inadvertently ask, by the way, what happened to our legendary hero, Steve Rogers, who came back from the ice? You know, if he can join our S.H.I.E.L.D., then the cohesion and strength of our S.H.I.E.L.D. will be greatly improved. After all, the undead, legendary hero is no joke. Listening to Pierce pretending to ask casually, Nick Fury handed him the report on the table. You can read it yourself. Anyway, the more I read it, the more helpless I become. Yep, Steve Rogers coming back from the ice. It is impossible to hide Alexander Pierce, the Secretary General of S.H.I.E.L.D. If such a big matter can be hidden from him, then S.H.I.E.L.D. will not be infiltrated by Hydra forces. So from the beginning, Nick Fury didn't want to hide him. After receiving the report from Nick Fury, Alexander Pierce glanced at it. Drinking coffee, fishing. It's quite leisurely. Who said it wasn't? Spreading his hands pretending to be helpless. Pierce, you must know that I valued Steve Rogers very much back then. I thought he could join our S.H.I.E.L.D. and become the leader of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Action Group. In the end, he rejected my proposal. According to him, he has devoted 70 years to this world. Right now, he just wants to live the life of the common people. Then what do you think? Putting down the report, Pierce laughed and said, and, that's Su Che who was with him. Why haven't I heard of such a character? What else can I think? Seeing Pierce looking at himself with a smile, Nick Fury said softly, forget it, anyway, for the sake of this world, he has been asleep for more than 70 years, and he has missed too much of his life. Then now, since he has made a choice, it's good that we respect his personal wishes. As for Su Che, looking at Pierce, Nick Fury said casually, it's a psychiatrist, you know, Steve Rogers, the captain of Legendary, was unwilling to cooperate with the psychiatrist we photographed for him. Or he has always had a deep resistance to S.H.I.E.L.D., thinking that S.H.I.E.L.D. will interfere with his new life when he comes back to life. So, I used a small method to let him find this psychologist named Su Che by himself. It's his own choice to find a psychiatrist he's willing to associate with, and it's his personal choice, so it has nothing to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. Anyway, how can you do it without seeing a psychiatrist? Well, the information on Su Che. When Nick Fury sent Steve Rogers to him. Even if Su Che's personal information is changed. At least, when interested people want to investigate Su Che's profile. You will find that he is a psychiatrist from Dongfang Longguo and the owner of Ta Hualan Cafe. The information shows that he is 19 years old? Doesn't that make him a genius? Why didn't you work in a professional psychological clinic, but opened a coffee shop by yourself? Blind, it doesn't matter. Those who investigate him will make up their own minds. If you don't want to make up your mind, if you want to dig deeper, you will see a very reasonable resume with details about discrimination. After hearing Nick Fury say that Su Che is just a psychiatrist, and that Steve Rogers was unwilling, even resisting, to join S.H.I.E.L.D., Alexander Pierce laughed. It's a shame, after all, he's Steve Rogers. Well, what Nick Fury said about Su Che is similar to what he asked Hydra to investigate. And Alexander Pierce didn't believe Nick Fury would lie to himself. After all, he is just a one-eyed joker who is full of trust in himself and can be fooled by himself at any time. After chatting for a while, Pierce smiled and got up to leave. Watching him leave his office, Mare Falksia, who was still smiling, became serious. This guy, Pierce, is getting more and more suspicious. Put your eyes on the black gold diary on the table. Anyway, Pierce can't see it, this is something he has tried. So Nick Fury didn't pay much attention, habitually flipping through the diary. I found out that this black gold diary has started to be updated again. Inertia closed the door of the office, and pressed the button of the shield under the desk. Nick Fury picked up the diary and read it. For a week, Steve's apparent mood has stabilized. Although there was still a trace of melancholy in the eyes, it dissipated a lot compared to the beginning. During these 7 days, the two of us went for a morning jog in the morning, and after taking a shower, we went to have breakfast together. The morning time is spent in the coffee shop, and in the afternoon I go fishing by the river. The pace of life this week is very slow, and it may not be long before Steve can accept all the current realities. At least in his words, in the last week, I was able to fall asleep at night. Well, actually, the real reason why he can accept the reality and feel at ease. Because I told him that I am actually not a person from this world. Many things are like this, not suffering from few but suffering from inequality. So when a person who is abandoned by the world meets another person who is abandoned by the world, there will always be comfort in his heart. He is. Me too. Don't worry about scarcity but inequality. What does this sentence mean? Looking at the contents recorded in the diary, Wanda raised her head and asked Natasha Romanoff. This is a very famous saying in Dongfang Wagwo. Facing Wanda's question, Natasha Romanoff explained with a smile. The original text of this sentence should be, I heard that those who have a country and a family do not suffer from poverty but from inequality, and do not suffer from poverty but from anxiety. Gai Jun Wu poor. Harmonious without widows, safe without leaning. Well, to give the simplest example, it's like distributing candy to a few children. If everyone had the same amount, then everyone would be very happy. But if you give one kid 3 candies and the other kid 5, then the kid who gets 3 pieces of candy will have unbalanced emotions in his heart. Hearing Natasha Romanoff's explanation, Wanda nodded lightly. I see. But Natasha Romanoff, how do you know this knowledge? Looking at Wanda with a very sincere questioning look, Natasha Romanoff was silent for a while, then put her arms around Wanda and said, when I received special training in the Red House, in those years we not only had to learn a lot of chemistry, firearms, makeup, concealment and other necessary skills for an agent. It is even more important to learn some knowledge about various countries. Because only in this way can we better integrate into some local environments and complete some tasks more smoothly. Obviously, Natasha Romanoff doesn't want to say anything more when it comes to the Red House organization. So he changed the subject and said with a smile, however, it seems that Sue should write the diary in Chinese, but what we see should be the literal translation of the Black Gold Diary. I didn't expect the Black Gold Diary to have the function of literal translation. At the beginning, I thought Sue wrote the diary in English. Hearing that Natasha Romanoff obviously changed the subject, she didn't want to continue talking about the Red House. Wanda smiled sweetly at her, then continued to read the diary. It's just that the white and delicate hand gently held Natasha Romanoff's hand. Everyone has a past that they don't want to talk about. Wanda knew this very early on. Feeling the warmth of Wanda's hand, Natasha Romanoff smiled silently. She knew that this was Wanda silently trying to comfort herself. Steve's mood is getting more and more stable, and it seems to have formed a habit. Almost every morning, I come running to knock on the door of my apartment, but that's okay. At least, I have forgotten how long I haven't gotten up early. When I used to live with my wife Wanda, We always hugged each other and stayed in bed until 7:30 in the morning. What? Seeing that he was mentioned, he still talked about how he hugged each other in bed in the morning. Wanda suddenly felt as if her cheeks were burned. I glanced at Natasha Romanoff quietly, and found that Natasha Romanoff looked as usual. Not even half a sneer. Wanda breathed a sigh of relief. 14 or 15 is the time to save face. This kind of thing is too embarrassing. Well, not myself. It's me in a parallel world. Constantly comforted myself in my heart. Just looking at the words below, Wang Momo's mouth still rose. It's Wanda's birthday in a few days. Natasha Romanoff has already invited me. Maybe I should prepare birthday gifts in advance. Pietro's birthday gift is a good choice. Just buy him a large game console and a wearable basketball. Wanda's birthday present should be carefully prepared. Look at preparing to prepare gifts for yourself with your heart. The corners of Wanda's mouth rose slightly. Like, ever since my parents passed away. It's been a long time since I received a birthday present. When I mentioned Natasha Romanoff, I suddenly thought of something. In my parallel universe, after Tony Stark was kidnapped and returned, Nick Fury sent Phil Coulson to ask Tony what happened and what happened to the armor. Using the time when Pepper Potts became the CEO of Stark Industries, Natasha Romanoff became Tony's assistant. It is for this reason that Nick Fury knew that Tony Stark was about to die from palladium poisoning. But now, Tony Stark is back, and Pepper has also met Natasha Romanoff more than once at the Tahualin Cafe. So what's next? Nick Fury will send someone to be Tony Stark's assistant to investigate this matter. But since Tony Stark held a press conference and announced the closure of the weapons manufacturing department. According to Peepo, it seems that no one from S.H.I.E.L.D. came to ask about Tony's kidnapping. Nick Fury is not curious about how Tony escaped. If he wasn't curious, then Tony might be dead. Seeing this in the diary, Nick Fury's expression suddenly became serious. Looking at what was written in the front of the diary, I thought I was just expressing my recent mood. Unexpectedly, I actually saw the black gold diary saying that Tony Stark was about to die. This can't help but make Nick Fury pay attention. Forget it. Anyway, Tony hasn't investigated it yet. The person who instigated the kidnapping of him is Obadiah Stan, whom he trusts the most, and even treats as an uncle. Wait until he investigates, and then after the battle with Obadiah Stan's Iron Overlord wearing the Mark armor is over. If Nick Fury doesn't make a move again, then I can only pretend to accidentally find out about Tony Stark and tell Natasha Romanoff. Anyway, according to Peepo, Tony has been looking for someone to inquire about what Peepo said about me, Mr. Superman, Juan. For Tony Stark, Peepo is always the best breakthrough. Although, the two of them are not together at the moment. But Tony Stark could be trusted at the moment, especially after the kidnapping thing. Only Peepo was left. Therefore, he absolutely does not allow anyone to approach Peepo with a sorry attitude. Definitely, let alone allow Peepo to be snatched away by others. Either that damn Mr. Superman or Batman, not even Joker. So, when Tony Stark found the coffee shop here, Su Che was not surprised at all. On the other hand, Steve on the side looked at Tony with something wrong. Hey man, even though I'm the greatest genius of this century, I don't like men, and men can't get a penny from me based on their looks. So don't look at me like that, thank you. Facing Steve's gaze, Tony Stark subconsciously leaned aside. Although the guy in front of him, Tony Stark always felt very familiar. It seems like I've seen it somewhere, but the look in his eyes made me feel a little uncomfortable. Please, what's the matter with a man looking at himself with that kind of burning eyes? Could it be that my charm has become bigger again, 313, and I can even attract men? Forget it, never mind. I'm here to do business today. I've taken a fancy to your coffee shop. Tell me, how much money are you willing to transfer to me? Looking at Su Che, Tony Stark said with a wealthy and powerful face. He didn't say a word about Peepo, and he didn't tell Su Che to stay away from Peepo. Based on this alone, Su Che sensed something was wrong. Since obtaining the Constitution, which is 10 times the peak physical fitness of ordinary people, Su Che found that even his own thinking became faster. A hand quietly dialed a number under the table. Then pretending to be inadvertently picked up the coffee and took a sip. Then he turned his head to Steve and asked with a smile, like it? Listening to Su Che asking himself, Steve knew that what he was asking was whether the Tony Stark in front of him looked like his father, Howard Stark back then. But although he looks very similar, he wasn't like that back then. Disgusting. That's pretty much what it means. I think arrogant is a better word, though. Hey, I said there is still a living person here, can you two respect me? I'm Tony Stark. Speaking of this, Tony Stark sneered. There have been many people who have said that I am arrogant over the years, who cares about you two guys? Let's talk about how much money you are willing to transfer this coffee shop. Looking at Su Che, Tony Stark said, proudly, after thinking about it, this may be money that you will never earn in your life, so I allow you to say a little more. Are you recording and videoing right? Seeing Tony deliberately pretending to be particularly arrogant, he looks like a nouveau riche. Su Che glanced at Tony, and then said softly, you deliberately put on such a gesture to provoke me, and then deliberately set a trap to make me speak out an astronomical figure. In this way, you can save this recording and video recording. Although this cannot be used as evidence, after all, according to the law here, as long as the buyer and seller reach an agreement, and it is completely voluntary, it is not considered extortion. However, the evidence you have preserved is not intended to sue me, but to show it to other people, so that other people will think that I am a greedy guy, right? Seeing Tony Stark's expression paused because of his words. Then put away the arrogant, and disgusting expression that he deliberately put on just now. Su Che nodded. It seems that I am right. Then let me guess, who do you want to give this audio and video recording to, and who do you want to let me see clearly my real face? Well, there aren't many people you Tony Stark would care about, but it's obviously a woman. There are very few women I have contacted who are related to you and who can make you care deeply. If there is no accident, it should be that Ms. Pei Potts. Hear Su Che's analysis. Tony Stark's expression also returned to normal. Obviously, the guy in front of him who was called Mr. Superman by Pepper is not easy to deal with. That's right, the Mr. Superman that Pepper said was right. I really think so. Even audio and video recordings are ready. As long as this guy dares to open his mouth like a lion, then I dare to fulfill him. Anyway, spend some money to let Peebo get to know him again. The real appearance of Mr. Superman, who she said is very caring and can understand and comfort others, is also quite good. In the end, he didn't expect to be guessed by him. Tisk. If only they were as stupid as the guys who flew to the Middle East in their armor a few days ago to blow up the weapons produced by the Stark industry. He took a sip of the coffee in front of him. Tony Stark nodded approvingly. The coffee is really good, but I don't like you guy. So let's say, what exactly do you want to stay away from Peebo? I don't believe that you have no other purpose in contacting Peebo. Are you so sure that I approached Ms. Pepper Potts with ill intentions? Seeing Tony's serious look, Yin deliberately teased him. Definitely. Looking at Su Che with certainty, Tony Stark smiled confidently. I don't believe that you have no other purpose in contacting Peebo. After all, Pepper called you Mr. Superman, and you called Pepper Pepper. Damn it, the age gap between the two of you is here. Although I admit that you are as handsome as the big fool next to you, and you have a temperament that is extremely attractive to women, but I don't believe that you touch Pei. Before Tony Stark finished speaking, Su Che picked up the phone and said with a smile, Peebo, did you hear what Mr. Tony Stark said? Water. The moment Su Che took out his phone, Tony Stark stared at Su Che with wide eyes. A bad premonition suddenly rose in my heart. Sure enough, when he heard him call Peebo on the other end of the phone. Tony's heart skipped a beat. Depend on. When I came here, I didn't piss him off, but I was pissed off by him. Sorry, Sue, I didn't expect this to happen. On the other end of the phone, Pepper Potts was always listening with his mobile phone. He apologized to Su Che with a very sincere tone. I don't know, Tony left the laboratory early in the morning, and he actually went to find you. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience this has caused you. For Tony Stark investigating his friends and wanting to use money to get his friends to leave. Pepper thinks. This fits Tony Stark. Although, he was annoyed at privately denying himself the right to make friends. But she knew that she shouldn't, at least she couldn't let Tony lose face outside. So Peebo just expressed his apology to Su Che, but he didn't lose his temper with Tony or anything like that. I have to say, this is a very nice, caring way of dealing with it. However, Tony's eyes froze at this moment, even a little flustered. But it reflects Tony's extremely real psychological activities at the moment. It's okay, I can understand. After all, this is also a kind of concern that Mr. Stark has for you. Although, This kind of concern has surpassed the concern of the boss for the assistant. But it also shows that the relationship between the two of you is really good. Well, very green tea. After a few words, Su Che smiled and hung up the phone. Damn it, you actually bully me. Looking at Su Che, Tony Stark didn't know whether to express anger or regret. In the end, he leaned on the chair and looked at Su Che speechlessly. The quality of coffee is so good, can't your character be like coffee? Mr. Stark, don't you think I'm just using your methods against you? Hearing Su Che's ridicule, Tony Stark was silent for a while. He didn't know what to say. After all, the guy in front of him just used his own method, and then returned it to himself. If you say that he is shameless and has a bad character, wouldn't you be scolding yourself? After a short silence, Tony Stark suddenly picked up the coffee on the table and drank it down. Immediately, he glanced at Su Che angrily, and then left directly. Thinking about going back, maybe Peepo would pretend to be doing nothing again, and then act businesslike. Tony had a headache, because that's the sign Peepo is really angry. However, it is really sad to leave like this. Gotta find some places to go. Walking to the door, this imposing billionaire, known as the greatest genius of this century, Tony Stark, the owner of Stark Industries, made a decision that did not conform to his status. That is, I will never pay for the cup of coffee I just drank. No way. That's childish enough. Watching Tony leave angrily, Steve smiled at Su Che. But this 5.7 point is really similar to Howard. But what's the matter with him and Peepo? Are they boyfriend and girlfriend? Listening to Steve's inquiry, Su Che smiled while holding his coffee. There are two of them, one is emotionally slow, and the other is worried about being together because of status issues. Others will think that she is going for Tony's money and status. So it's all hiding their emotions from each other. For two people like this, there must be some external catalyst. So I understand, just like me and Peggy back then. Picking up the coffee and taking a sip, Steve looked at Su Che and said with a smile, actually, there are people from S.H.I.E.L.D. who are monitoring me all the time. I know they mean well, so yesterday I found the person who watched me and asked him to help me get some good nesting fish feed. Calculate the time, they have already put the fish material in the place where we often fish. Walk. Well, let's go. 3 days later. The more I look at you, the more familiar you feel. He folded his arms and looked at Steve Rogers sitting opposite him. Holding the coffee, Tony Stark looked cynical. It's not good for you to say that you look like someone, you have to be like that annoying guy. I don't know who you're talking about. He looked at himself with Tony Stark's playful eyes. Steve Rogers laughed. Then he turned his head and looked at Su Che. You know, who is he talking about? I don't know. Maybe the brain circuit of a genius is different from that of us common people. Otherwise, after being trapped on the first day, one after another would come here almost every day. And he chose to sit across from us. Facing Steve's smile, Su Che said, who knew that the brain circuit of this genius was different from that of common people. Come on, man, you think I can't find out who you are? Taking off his sunglasses and putting them on the table, Tony Stark looked at the two of them and said, Steve Rogers, a guy who has disappeared and been frozen for nearly 70 years. How about it? The old record player, can it continue to play records now? Do you feel that the new world is full of computers and mobile phone speakers that can play music at any time, so your record player can't continue to work? I heard from 17 that the two of you have been fishing together every day recently? Wow. This kind of comfortable life may make you feel calm. After all, this world no longer needs an antique to be placed anywhere. Maybe in addition to fishing, you should also put on your status symbol blue uniform and do aerobics for exercise. After all, fish have great strength in the water. I am worried that your old body will not be able to pull the fish out of the water. Listening to Tony Stark speak very unflattering words in a very fast tone, Steve Rogers was silent for a while with his cup of coffee. So, is this the evil fruit you so-called planted by yourself? Looking at Su Che, Steve Rogers laughed at himself. Although this matter has nothing to do with me directly. But I think it must have hurt him deeply when Howard indirectly used my deeds for comparison. Otherwise he wouldn't have such a big negative energy towards me. Depend on. Hearing Steve's words, Tony Stark shook his hands. Come on, you think too much of yourself. Who am I? I'm Tony Stark. I can make circuit boards at the age of 4, and I can make circuit boards at the age of 6. Get the engine out. I'm the greatest genius and billionaire of this century. Will I be hurt because of you? That seems to be true. Seeing Steve mentioning Howard, Tony was obviously a bit defensive, but he still pretended to be indifferent. Su-Che nodded, agreeing with Steve Rogers' words. Okay. Let's not talk about this antique record player, how about you? Looking at Su-Che, Tony Stark put down his coffee cup and asked, what ability do you have? I can't believe that this old record player will stay with a common person every day. I've had both of you analyzed by JARVIS, and I've determined that neither of you are common. Confront Tony Stark's curiosity. Su-Che gestured towards the outside. Instead of caring about me, you might as well care about your Stark Industry. No, your Stark Industries CEO, Obadiah Stine, is being taken away. Water? Hearing Su-Che's words, Tony Stark subconsciously turned his head and looked out the window. Opposite the Tahualan Cafe, under the Stark Industrial Building, some people who obviously look like the FBI are dragging Obadiah Stine, who is obviously struggling, into the car. Damn it. Seeing this scene, Tony Stark frowned, then got up and walked out of the coffee shop. Obviously, he just asked Peepo, and wanted her to help confirm it in Obadiah Stine's office. Regarding his being attacked and kidnapped, was it planned by Obadiah Stine? Or to reveal the news of his actions? Why haven't we waited for Peepo to send the news of starting the investigation? Obadiah Stine was taken by this group. Know why you came to this coffee shop? One of its purposes is, in case Peepo is discovered while investigating the news. Or when there is some danger to press the button in your hand. Then Tony Stark felt that he was sure, and asked Steve Rogers, who had just been complained about by himself, to help. After all, according to what the old man said, about Steve Rogers' character, and combined with JARVIS's analysis based on his past deeds. No matter what kind of complaints he suffered from himself. But when it was time for him to help, he would never choose to ignore it. In addition, although Su-Che doesn't know what ability he has, he is obviously not from common. And he and Pepper are still friends, damn Mr. Superman. Then just Pepper pushes the dangerous button. I can immediately take the two of them to rush over to support as soon as possible. As a result, before Peepo pressed the button symbolizing start, there was no warning about danger. This guy Obadiah Stine was actually taken away by this group of people? What happened? Could it be that my guess is true, that Obadiah Stine is really the mastermind who kidnapped him? Go outside and watch the guys stuff Obadiah Stine into the car. Tony Stark stepped forward immediately. Hey, which department are you from? Why are you arresting the CEO of Stark Industries? Well, often pretending to be ignorant is the only way to get the information you want. As for danger, come on, didn't you see the two guys sitting by the window in the opposite Tahualan Cafe looking at you? If this group of people were attackers, and they could take themselves away in the hands of these two annoying guys, then Tony Stark will definitely accept his fate. Damn, which kidnapper broke into Stark Industry in the 370th day of Dubai, and kidnapped the CEO of Stark Industry? Clearly this is the official one. Mr. Tony Stark, we are the FBI. He took out his ID and showed it to Tony, then the leading man in the black suit said, after our investigation, we found that the mastermind behind the kidnapping of you Mr. Stark 3 months ago was this Obadiah Stine who was arrested by us. Mr. Stark, a copy of the results of our interrogation will be sent to you for your records later. But for now, please don't get in the way of our work. Listen to this FBI agent. Although Tony Stark was already prepared in his heart, he looked at Obadiah Stine who had been pushed into the car. For a while, it still felt a little unacceptable. Although I asked Peepo to help investigate, it was because I had doubts in my heart. But why doesn't Tony Stark hope that his guess is wrong? After all, Obadiah Stine has been helping take care of his business with Stark Industries since the death of his father and his own mother. He even regarded him as an uncle himself, but now, get out of the way and watch Obadiah Stine being taken away by the FBI. All of a sudden, Tony Stark felt that his emotions were very complicated. Regarding the early arrest of Obadiah Stine, if there is no shadow of Nick Fury in it, then even if you kill Su-Che, you won't believe it. I wrote in my diary that Obadiah Stine was the mastermind who planned to attack Tony Stark. I also wrote about Tony Stark dying from palladium poisoning. If Nick Fury doesn't do anything after seeing it, then Su-Che will definitely go to S.H.I.E.L.D. to open his head and see if there is any water in it. However, Su-Che didn't pay much attention to the matter of Obadiah Stine's arrest. What really caught Su Che's attention was that the trust value of the Queen of Asgard, Frigga, finally fluctuated. Although, the trust value is only a simple 10% now. But this shows that after waiting for half a month, that Queen Frigg is finally willing to open this black gold diary. It's really not easy. If the system randomly selects Steve, then maybe I have already maxed out my trust value. Looking at the display on the system, Queen Frigga's trust value fluctuated. Su Che opened the diary writing page and started to brush her trust value. Well, Nick Fury can't be missed either. It's already 73%. Strive to pull Nick Fury's trust value to over 90 within 5 diaries. Looks like it's a bit difficult. It is estimated that if Frigga's trust value reaches 90%, Nick Fury's trust value will not reach 90%. Bah, old bastard. Asgard, within Asgard. Just put the vase there. Looking at the flowers picked by the maid from the garden, Queen Frigg smiled and motioned for the maids to put flowers on the balcony. Wait until all the maids have retreated. Then Queen Frigg walked to the window and gently sniffed the fragrance from the flowers. Then he picked up the black gold diary and read it. When she first saw this black gold diary, Queen Frigg didn't pay much attention to it. Even if only he can see this black gold diary. But, for Frigga who has already seen more treacherous things, not a big deal. And I have never felt a trace of energy fluctuations in this black gold diary. Since it is not an artifact, there is no danger. Then show up. Until the last few days, Thor took Asgards to Karen waxing to judgment, and not after the rebellion. Frigga, who had nothing to do, was now in the mood, and picked up the black gold diary to read. Although his son is reckless, impulsive and warlike, he has Sif and Loki. It shouldn't be a big problem. When I first opened the diary, Frigga discovered that the text on the black gold diary actually came from the Warner Protoss, not the Acer Protoss. This made Frigga a little interested. After all, this journal appears in Asgard. Then it should be the text of the Acer Protoss. Perhaps, because he is a member of the Vanir Protoss, not a member of the Acer Protoss? And this black gold diary is related to the Warner Protoss? Frigga didn't find out until she opened the diary. It turned out that the owner of this black gold diary was an Earthling from a parallel world. Not a member of the Warner Protoss that I guessed. The first entry in the diary mainly records the story of the destruction of his parallel universe. Definitely, Kong the Conqueror in the diary didn't know it himself. But the God group, I know it myself. This exists in the legendary, like sleeping among the planets. After waking up, the planet will be destroyed. After reading the first diary, the words full of despair are vividly displayed in front of Frigg. But gradually, through the following diaries, Frigg discovered the things described in the diary. Seems like it's all about the Earth. There are very few things about Asgard. The only thing relevant are the names of Thor and Loki. Then, if it happened on the Earth, why did this black gold diary appear in front of him? Although Odin had an agreement with the venerable Ancient One mage on Earth back then, Asgard will never invade Earth. But other than that, Asgard doesn't seem to have much to do with Earth. Although it is one of the 9 realms, although Asgard's responsibility is to protect the safety of the 9 realms. However, this should not be the reason why the black gold diary appeared in front of him. If the owner of this diary is Jotunheim's Frost Titan, then I can still understand. After all, neither is the friction between Jotunheim and Asgard. Or Loki, the son of Lof, king of the Ice Titan. However, the owner of the black gold diary is Earth. Although I don't know why this black gold diary would choose me. And no one else including Odin can see it except yourself. But Frigga's mood didn't fluctuate in any way. Even accepted it very calmly. Assuming that the reason is that I am the mother of Thor and Loki recorded in the diary. As for why not Odin, who knows? It's a pity that if the owner of the black gold diary came from another parallel universe, he didn't appear in front of him. Then I, who was raised by a witch, will definitely be able to see more things. Definitely, having a black gold diary that can see the future is already the luckiest thing. If you ask for too much, I am afraid that even the Tree of Life will not pay attention. But see the end of the first diary, after seeing the names of Thor and Loki. Only then did Frigg know. It turns out that in the parallel world of the owner of the black gold diary, Thor and Loki are the superheroes of the Earth. Saved the opponent countless times, and finally joined the superheroes of the Earth to fight against the conqueror Kong and the gods. Only later, they failed. finally fought to the death. Well, the first diary accounted for Loki and Hill. But it didn't write that he was a villain at first. It is only stated that they fought against Kong the Conqueror and the Celestial Group together. So Frigga comes naturally. It is considered that Loki in the parallel world is also a member of superhero. Although it's hard to imagine, this youngest son of mine will become a superhero. But when he thought of his two sons, they were all killed in battle. Frigga will inevitably feel a little heartache. Then I continued to look at the last few diaries, only to find that they were inside the last few diaries. Not much more is written about Thor and Loki. Through Hildam's eyes, Queen Frigg can indeed be sure that the black gold diary named Su-Che is the person. Right now on Earth. But she didn't send anyone to bother her. On the one hand, although things in parallel universes are likely to happen in their universe as well. But I can't make more changes by myself. On the other hand, I don't want to cause the misunderstanding of the Earth's Supreme Mage Ancient One. After all, Su-Che from the parallel universe came to Earth in this universe. The Supreme Mage Ancient One didn't even show up, and even knew it through Hildam's eyes. That Supreme Mage was only at the moment when Su-Che came to Earth. I just glanced at him from time to time, but I didn't continue to pay attention. Then Frigga would naturally not send someone to bring that Su-Che back through Bifrost. I have nothing to do, let the maid back down. Frigga stood by the window and picked up the black gold diary, ready to see if there was any update. She really wants to know what will happen to her two children in the parallel universe in the future. Perhaps, this is also the future fate of the two children of this universe. Therefore, through the description in the black gold diary, maybe I can change the future of my two sons. It may even indirectly change the fate of this universe. Open the black gold diary. Frigga found that the 9th diary was finally updated. I hope, this time, I can write something about my two sons. Obadiah Stine was captured, although it was captured by a group of FBI, but I guess it should be related to S.H.I.E.L.D. Although, in the original world, Tony and Obadiah Stine would have a fierce battle. But yes, this is a parallel world after all, and it is normal for small things to have some deviations. Even Steve came back from thawing ahead of time, so it shouldn't be a surprise that Obadiah Stan was caught. Since I came to this world, I have met Natasha Romanoff, Steve, Tony, the members of the first-generation Avengers Alliance, and I have also met Wanda and Pietro. Excluding these two young people who are about to turn 15. Just short of meeting Dr. Banner, Barton, and Thor. Dr. Banner should still be on the run, and then under the surveillance of S.H.I.E.L.D., he lived in seclusion in that small village. Hawkeye, Natasha Romanoff said he was on a mission. As for Thor, I don't know how long Thor's hammer will fall from the sky. After all, when the hammer fell from the sky, it symbolized that Thor was deprived of his divine power by Odin, the king of Asgard, and exiled to the earth. I saw that Thor was finally written in the diary. Queen Frigg's expression became slightly serious. It's just after seeing the hammer falling from the sky and Thor being banished to Earth. Queen Frigg was stunned for a few seconds. His son is highly valued by his husband, and even regarded as Thor trained by Asgard's next god king. How could he be deprived of his divine power by himself, and then exiled to the Earth? Thinking of this result, Queen Frigg, well, in fact, Frigga felt that if such a thing really happened, then it seems that there is no fuss. After all, according to Thor's aggressive and reckless character at the moment, her husband deprived him of his divine power and exiled him to the earth to live the life of some common people. It is also very possible. Maybe it's like what I saw in the beginning of the diary. Thor became a common man on Earth precisely because he was deprived of his divine power. That's why I will gradually grow up later and become a superhero full of responsibility and patience. A person's character can never be changed without experiencing something personally. This point, Frigg is very clear. So, she was going to keep reading. See if there is any mention in the diary why Thor was deprived of his divine power by his husband and exiled to the earth. It's not that I want to stop, but I want to see if there is anything I can do to help with the exile of Thor. Even design it yourself. Although this will make Thor suffer some hardships, if Thor can really grow up at this moment. In the future, he is qualified to become the qualified king of Asgard and provoke the burden of Asgard. Then Frigga doesn't mind personally planning the exile of Thor. So, really only Loki picked it up. For us, Thor has always been a trustworthy friend. For the Earth, Thor is a trustworthy superhero. Although many things happened in the middle, he is still our partner. However, I still hope that the Mjolnir will fall from the sky as soon as possible, and Thor will be deprived of his divine power and become a common man and exiled to the earth. It's not that I can't wait to see the old man, who used to live and die together, and fight against the teammates who want to destroy the world and destroy the enemies of the universe. Instead, I hope that Thor, who is over 1500 years old, can mature as soon as possible. The faster his character matures, the higher our chances of winning will be when this parallel world is in crisis of destruction in the future. Also, I don't want to see Thor's sad but helpless eyes when Asgard is destroyed and half of its people are slaughtered. I don't even want to see the picture of him dying in endless despair when the universe is destroyed. Shield taking a deep breath, Nick Fury had an extremely complicated expression at the moment. I don't know why, when I saw this sentence, I hope this Thor who is over 1500 years old can mature as soon as possible. Nick Fury always felt a little awkward, 1500 years old. Lived for more than 1500 years. Nope. Just like this, there are still people who are still immature at the age of more than 1563. In Nick Fury's opinion, this is unimaginable, even unreasonable, okay? Just let a person on Earth live for more than 1500 years. Then he will far exceed the common people in terms of character and experience. You know, the maximum lifespan of people on Earth is only over 100 years. But what about this big guy? According to Suche, the guy who has lived for more than 1500 years is still immature. So what has Thor been doing for more than 1500 years? It is because he is too well protected and has not experienced the baptism and beating of wind and rain, so his character is immature. Or is it because of character originally? No matter because of the above problems. Nick Fury feels that living more than 1500 years old is immature. Then no matter how strong his ability is, he cannot be trusted at all. Not to mention, as Suche said, when faced with life and death, you are willing to surrender your back and entrust your life. Only. Now that Suche is writing inside the diary, Thor will eventually become fully worthy of their trust. So does it mean that Thor was deprived of God's magic by the so-called God King Odin? After being exiled to the earth, it slowly began to mature. If a person wants to become mature, he must go through some things. It's just about the fact that Thor matured after he came to Earth. Is there any intervention by S.H.I.E.L.D.? Regardless of which parallel world Sue is in, Thor matures with or without S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intervention. Anyway, Nick Fury decided, in order to let the Earth have one more helper, let the Avengers Alliance have one more superhero. Just like Sue said, when that iconic hammer fell from the sky. The Thor of this universe was exiled to the Earth and became the common people. Then I must arrange several sets of plans for Thor. Don't dare to say anything else. Design a few stories. Let a guy who loses his divine power and becomes a common man grow up and mature as soon as possible. On its own, this should be perfectly fine. Start with emotion first. Then there is life and death. Finally woke up. In the middle, there are some love and hatred, life and death, etc. A series of packages. After these few sets, even people with childish personalities will grow up. Although the process will be a little bit intense and hard. But, for the sake of the planet, Nick Fury doesn't mind turning himself into a little composition expert. Now. Thor, who is judging on behalf of Asgard and launching a happy campaign against the disobedient rebels. Didn't know he was being watched. Even the next thing after being exiled to the Earth. It's all been arranged by someone, definitely. Thor doesn't even know, the man who designed him. Looks like it's not just Nick Fury. Even his most beloved mother, the gentle and kind Queen Frigg. They are all ready to personally design, let their husband Odin deprive Thor of his divine power, and banish him to the earth. No way. When I saw the Black Gold diary, it said that Asgard would be destroyed and half of the people would be slaughtered. In the end, after Thor died in endless unwillingness, the Queen of Asgard seems to have appeared before her eyes when she was not married to Odin. One after another, the fearless warriors of the Warner Protoss charged forward. But the final result is a tragic and desperate scene of death. As the only Protoss in the 9 realms, the Huaner Protoss experienced several life and death battles between Bor and Kur. There are not many left now. So, at this moment, myself as Queen of Asgard. The tragedy of the Warner Protoss is absolutely not allowed to happen to the people of Asgard. Perhaps, it is really like what that Suche said. The sooner Thor matures, the future of Asgard and Earth, and even the 9 realms. It will be more stable. What's more, Thor is the next king of Asgard. It is his responsibility to protect the 9 realms and Asgard. As long as Thor can mature as soon as possible, he can become the qualified crown prince of Asgard as soon as possible. So even if the final result is that Asgard is still not immune. But at that time, Frigga was willing to believe, and waited for the day when he entered the Soul Castle. Surely no one will blame him. Thinking of this, Frigga continued to read the diary. After reading this diary, I plan to go to my husband Odin to discuss it. Odin, the god king of Asgard. You also don't want to see our future king of Asgard, an arrogant, immature and warlike person. Wanda and Pietro's birthday presents are ready. My Scarlet Witch will love this birthday gift. But these days, when fishing with Steve, he always mentions things 70 years ago intentionally or unintentionally. Every time I mention it, my eyes are filled with disappointment. However, I know that he is not sad because he feels that he cannot integrate into this brand new world. Instead, he misses the girl who once belonged to him. Okay, maybe I'm going to give Nick Fury a call. As a friend, there are some things that you can never pretend you didn't see. Definitely, the premise is that he has made up his mind. Otherwise, I can't imagine how he should face it, and owe the girl who was 70 years late for the dance. Okay, as I write this, I'm also a little homesick. Unfortunately, Steve still has a chance to find her, but I am in this world, only a house, no home. Welcome to Wanda and Pietro's birthday party. Opening the door, he looked at Su-Che and Steve who had been invited and were already standing at the door. Natasha Romanoff smiled and invited the 2 people in, and said, "Thank you for coming. But I guessed that the 2 of you would come together. After all, you 2 are inseparable these days." When Nick Fury talked about this matter, it was obvious it's a bit sour. Especially Steve. After you rejected Nick Fury's offers again and again, he always said you were kidnapped by Sue. But to be honest, as Wanda and Pietro's guardian, I don't have many friends because of work. After much deliberation, I can only invite the 2 of you. After all, Barton has not returned from his mission. Thank you for inviting X2. Hearing what Natasha Romanoff said, Su-Che and Steve laughed at the same time. Go into the apartment. Although the apartment that S.H.I.E.L.D. arranged for Wanda and Pietro is not small, it is very warmly furnished. The layout of 3 bedrooms, 1 living room and 2 bathrooms is enough for Wanda, Natasha Romanoff and Pietro. There are many garlands arranged in the living room, and there is a big cake on the table in the middle. There's even a birthday banner for Wanda and Pietro. It can be seen that Natasha Romanoff really cares about Wanda and Pietro. Especially when Wanda and Pietro came over and greeted Su-Che and Steve very politely. You can tell by watching Wanda holding Natasha Romanoff's arm with undisguised affection. After all, for Wanda and Pietro, looking at the experience of losing parents and joining Hydra, to be so close to Natasha Romanoff now, this is enough to prove that Natasha Romanoff really raised the Wanda siblings as her own younger siblings. Wanda, Pietro, be happy. Su-Che and Steve smiled and handed over the birthday present. Steve gave Wanda a very ladylike dress for her birthday, and a very handsome suit for Pietro. This is the first time he has received an invitation to a birthday party since he recovered from the ice. So in order to prepare the gift, Steve dragged Su Dikwang to take office. Well, when the shopping guide lady looked at the 2 of them, that knocked look in her eyes. Forget it. Su-Che doesn't want to talk about this topic. And Su-Che prepared a wear-resistant basketball and a latest model palm-shaped game console for Pietro. The gift prepared for Wanda is a necklace of pure crystal and diamonds. Thanks for the gift from Su-Che and Steve. Both Wanda and Pietro looked very happy. This is the first time they have received a gift since their parents passed away. Especially Wanda. Looking at the pure crystal and diamond-encrusted necklace in his hand, his eyes were almost bent into a crescent shape, and they were obviously brighter. Girls, they all like this kind of gift that can bling bling in the sun. What's more, this is a gift from my future husband. As for Pietro, while looking at the handsome suit and laughing, he happily held the basketball and the game console. If it wasn't because today is my and Wanda's birthday, it would be a small party. Then Pietro can't wait to put on a suit immediately, pretend to be an adult, and then play a game console with a basketball in his arms. In any case, no matter how mature his mentality is compared to his peers, he is only 15 years old. On the table, seeing that Wanda did not sit with Natasha Romanoff, but sat next to Su Che with ease. Even when cutting the cake, after handing the first piece of cake to Natasha Romanoff. Then she handed Su Che the part of the fruitcake that she liked the most. Although immersed in the joy of celebrating his birthday, Pietro clearly felt that something was wrong with his sister, Sister Wanda. The way she looked at Su Che, her eyes were undisguised. It's like looking at a lover. It's over. As the person who is most familiar with Wanda, Pietro is very sure. Wanda absolutely loves this young man named Su Che in front of her. That kind of look can never be misunderstood. After liking Natasha Romanoff, my younger sister will start liking Su Che, who was only seen once in the coffee shop before. Moreover, sometimes when I go out to the bathroom at night. In the living room, Wanda and Natasha Romanoff can always be heard discussing about Su Che. People. Natasha Romanoff and Wanda like each other, and Wanda is a young man named Su Che. Sister Natasha Romanoff not only didn't stop her, but smiled and watched the incident happen. Is there even a hint of encouragement? And Su Che and Steve came together. Just now Natasha Romanoff also said that Su Che is almost inseparable from Steve these days. Two big men are inseparable. My God. Why'd I feel that the relationship between these four people is so chaotic? So, I should be happy after all. Wanda's orientation is finally normal, and she finally likes men. Or should we be confused, the mess of these four people? For a while, Pietro felt that his head seemed to be a little insufficient. The small world view seems to be gradually collapsing. Steve. Let Su drink. Watching myself hand a beer to Steve, who then handed it to Su Che. Natasha Romanoff smiled and said, Su is only 19 years old this year. According to the laws here, Su is not yet old enough to drink alcohol. After saying this, Natasha Romanoff laughed herself. After all, even she didn't treat Su Che as a 19-year-old youth. And Steve even subconsciously looked at Su Che in a daze. These days, when two people get along almost day and night, whether it is from chatting or other aspects, Steve felt that Su Che and him were people from the same world, and they should be about the same age. So they all subconsciously ignored that Su Che is only 19 years old this year, not yet old enough to drink. Su Che is 19 years old, not yet old enough to drink. So what's up with the two of them always carrying a bucket of cold beer when the two of them are fishing? No wonder every time, Su let himself deliver the beer through the shield agent monitoring him. The co-author is because he is not old enough, so the store will not sell him alcohol. Okay, don't worry about it. Picking up another beer and handing it to Su Che, Natasha Romanoff smiled and said, although Su is not old enough, today is Wanda and Pietro's birthday party after all, so it's a family affair. So don't worry about these little things. No one will report anyway, right? What's more, who among us regards Su as a young man who is only 19 years old? Listening to Natasha Romanoff's words, Steve nodded slightly. He still felt unable to treat Su Che as a 19-year-old young man. On the contrary, Wanda, who always sat next to Su Che and behaved like a very well-behaved lady, was very happy. Well, he was 19. I will be 15 years old after today. 4 years apart. No matter how old he is in the parallel world. But his parallel world has been destroyed, and in his parallel world, he is definitely an adult, otherwise he would not be his wife. Therefore, the time in his world is several years faster than the time in this world. Calculated in this way, in this world, the age difference between myself and Su is only 4 years old, just right. Several people sat at the dining table talking and laughing very happily. But, Asgard at the same time. At this moment, Loki looked at the scene in front of him, and was already a little dazed.